Welcome to the only place where real, raw, and vulnerable conversations happen with IFBB bikini pros to give you an inside look at their struggles, strategies, mindset, passions, and all of life beyond the stage. This podcast is made to inspire, motivate, and remind competitors and the average gym goer that even the most extreme lifestyles and elite athletes have their ups and downs. Thank you so much for tuning in today. I'm your host, Celeste Rains-Turk, and now it's time for the Confessions of a Bikini Pro podcast. Hello, everyone. Today we have the opportunity to speak with a professional who is currently in prep, and by the time you hear this, she will be in peak week of her first show of 2020 and her first show in the United States at Governor's Cup in Sacramento. She began competing in 2017 with the plans of only competing in one show, but after not placing well or being satisfied with her final package, she was determined to compete again to prove to herself that she could do better. From there, this athlete fell in love with the sport, and 8 competitions later, she earned her pro card, then went on to get 3rd place at her first pro show, her pro debut. So from Canada to wherever you are, we welcome to the show Jenn Scott. How are you doing?
I'm great. Thanks for having me. I'm so excited to be on here, and finally we're getting to talk in person. Thanks for having me. So excited.
Yeah, of course. I'm so happy you're here and appreciate you taking the time to come on. And we have a lot to talk about today, even some topics that have never been discussed on this podcast before, believe it or not. If you're a longtime listener, it's possible. And I just can't wait to get into all of that with you. So
Yes,
that I
do.
have to ask, what is something you do or a ritual you have right before your heel hits the stage?
Okay, so I'm someone who has high anxiety. I get pretty stressed out. That was a big part of why my first competition went so badly, is I was just so stressed out and so anxious. So now, before I step on the stage, when I'm backstage and we're getting close to the stage, I look at the stage, I try to see the judges, I try to see the audience, and then I start to visualize like stepping on that stage, what the audience is going to look like, what the judges are going to look like, how my routine's going to go. And then I'll take deep breaths and like calm myself, remind myself to be present. And then I just remind myself, go out there, have fun. This is your moment. And I've been doing that every show since my first show, and it's paid off so far.
That's awesome. What happened at your first show that, didn't go so smoothly?
So my first show, I don't know how I envisioned it going. I didn't sleep, I don't think, like at all the night before, just super anxious. My first show was local in Regina, Saskatchewan, where I live. And the second I stepped on the stage, I was so nervous. I was shaking. My lips quivered the whole time. I don't know if you've ever experienced that feeling.
That still happens
I've had
to
it a
me.
couple of times. It happens to me occasionally, but it was insane the first time. I went on stage, I got through my routine, and then like I didn't remember any of it. I like blanked out everything. Yeah, I was so nervous, and I don't know. I didn't envision what it was going to be like to be on that stage, and then stepping out there, it was different than anything I ever experienced before.
Oh yeah, I totally
and doing it in a
get that.
bikini. And in a bikini, like I'd never done anything like that in my life. So yeah, it was extremely stressful for me. And somehow, like, I'm surprised that I did it again, because it was a really bad experience, but I was determined to do better the next time around.
Your competitive spirit was like, all right, we need to do it again.
Yes, absolutely.
And you're currently 4 weeks out, and a lot of times, this is when girls start tightening things up even more with their diet, their training, and even their schedule. So how does your approach to life or competing and getting ready change during the last 4 weeks of your preps? Does it like anything new or different that you do or implement?
So for me, I work full time. Well, I was working Monday to Friday. Now it's Monday to Thursday. But working full time, I kind of need to be organized and prepare things in advance. I know that in the last 4 weeks, I need to spend more time doing things like posing, doing things like vacuum abs. There's potential for doing more cardio. So knowing that I'm going to have all these things that are going to take up more time, in advance, I will do things like I'll prepare like chicken. I think right now we have like 8 family size packs of chicken already cooked, cut up, pre-portioned in bags in the freezer. I have at least like 15 bags of yam fries that I've like made myself. They're all in the freezer. So I know for the next month I have chicken and yams good to go. And other than that, I basically eat oatmeal. I just keep it simple, cut out anything that makes my life any type of difficult. I just go simple and everything seems to work. I find that's the easiest way. I don't have to think about it. I just, same thing over and over.
For sure. And you never get tired of it?
I find like in the beginning, so this is my 4th year now, I found in the beginning at times I would get sick of certain foods, and now the only thing I really get sick of is chicken. I just look forward to yams and to oatmeal, and I just like live for my yams and oatmeal basically. And then I consume my chicken and vegetables. For vegetables, I just cook them in my Acti-Fry. It takes like 15 minutes. I take a frozen bag of vegetables, throw them in, cook them, and yeah, just eat chicken, vegetables, yams, and oatmeal.
For sure. And that works for you. And you said, in the past you would get tired of chicken, and it makes me wonder if there's anything you don't love about competition prep as a whole.
As a whole, like my least favorite part of competition prep is doing vacuums. They are
really?
The worst. Yeah, like I
did not expect that.
I'm someone who doesn't naturally have a small waist, and it's something that I always have got feedback for, like in my preps from my coaches, is like, you need to bring your waist in, you need to bring your waist in. So I feel like I do them more than most people, and it's just, you're trying so hard to like squeeze your abs in, and it's hard to breathe. It's not what I want to do. I'd rather do cardio. I'd rather lift weights. I would rather pose. I just don't want to do vacuum abs.
Wow, that's so surprising. I just
Yeah.
You'd rather do cardio than that.
Yeah, I used to be an endurance athlete, so cardio, like I'm really good at cardio. I know I shouldn't say this, but I do like less cardio than I would probably like for the most part.
Oh, wow. How much cardio are you doing right now?
It varies with my coach. I do cardio based on what he tells me. It changes day to day. So today I had to do 30 minutes low intensity. Yesterday I did 20 minutes high intensity. The 2 days before that I didn't do any cardio at all. So it fluctuates.
Got it.
Not a lot.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like it's a lot, but it is cool that you're using different methods. And I definitely want to talk to you more about that later on in this show for sure. But I wanted to also ask you, aside from things maybe you don't like, which we've learned are vacuums, is there anything weird that you do as a competitor? Because, some people just do weirder stuff, maybe leading up close to the show. Some people do weird things all the time. What about you?
I think I do weird things all the time, but some of the things that I found, like, because this is my lifestyle, this is how I live, in prep or out of prep is kind of the same. In prep, I get little less condiments, a little less variety, but I like the amount of salt that I have and salt shakers. I think I probably own like 7 or 8 salt shakers. I have one in my gym bag. I have them at work. I just have them everywhere. Like I can't be without salt. And I think it's weird. Sometimes I have it in my purse. That and plastic utensils. I have at least 4 different kinds of plastic spoons at home, and I just think it makes food taste better.
What?
Feels like it's takeout if I have plastic utensils.
Actually, that makes sense. I can see that. That part I get.
Yeah. So that's how I spice it up, switching utensils.
That's definitely weird. The salt shaker thing got me too, because I'm like, how do you keep it from spilling everywhere? Do you have the kind that you can cover?
Yeah, I have the kinds with like the screw-on lids. The ones that don't have a screw-on lid, those ones we just have at home. And we still have like 3 or 4 of them because I'll just move them into different rooms in the house because sometimes there's not enough salt. Like I need to have salt with me with like each meal in case it's not salty enough.
So do you manipulate salt as you get closer to a show?
No, I haven't. So I have pink Himalayan salt. This is something that I learned when I did my precision nutrition that I didn't know. And I was like mind blown that this should be like a common thing that everyone knows, that like white table salt is toxic, whereas like sea salt and like pink Himalayan salt and like any of like the natural salts are good for you. So I used to try to cut out all salt. Like my first year, I cut out all sodium out of my diet, and it was really bad, and it really affects your energy. And then now I use so much salt. I don't retain any water. It doesn't really seem to have any effect on my body. I've never cut it out since. There's
Wow.
like no salt. Yeah, like no manipulation at all.
That's interesting. And I know like with Himalayan salt, it doesn't have as much iodine. And so some people actually need to have more of like the table salt type of salt or sea salt, I think. But yeah, I also know a lot of competitors do fear salt. I know myself, like I was like, oh, I'm not allowed to have salt on anything. This was before I even started competing, and my boyfriend was like, yeah, you can just have as much salt as you want and then drink a ton of water for like the salt that you have. I'm like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. But I actually personally, at least every prep that I've done, we've manipulated salt to some degree, but not by much.
And how did you manipulate it? Like, would you cut it out like closer to a show and then like add it in?
So it would
Like,
be like my coach would know like the normal amount of salt I was having. Like I would tell him, oh, I usually put like, let's say 3 to 5 cracks of Himalayan salt on my food every day and every meal that's savory, you know? And then, or I would say like, oh, I was using ketchup or whatever. And then he would say, okay, let's put 2 teaspoons of salt on, however many meals you want today. So like a total of 2 in the day. Or maybe he would say 1 to 2 teaspoons on this meal or that meal. So he would just tell me how many teaspoons of salt. And so then I would measure it out, and then just put that on one of my meals. And it's not that bad. That's only in like peak week. And I don't know the reasoning for that other than that we water manipulate. So I imagine it's something to do with making sure that at least the muscle belly still don't look too depleted.
okay. So you're not sure exactly like the changes. You're just like a mixture of water manipulation and salt.
Yeah, and I don't really ask because for me it's just like what I've always done and it's always worked, but yeah, I don't know exactly why.
Yeah, fair enough. I know. So I, I, I say like I've never manipulated salt, but I know one show day I had a coach tell me like to not have any salt on that day, and I can't say I noticed it made a difference. Like I didn't feel any different. I don't think I looked any different. But
Mhm.
since then, I haven't had like any coach manipulate any salt other than I've been told like make sure it's consistent, but like I consistently
Yes.
eat an excessive amount, so I feel like it doesn't fluctuate that much.
Yes, my
And I
coach
eat it
has
on
said that too.
everything.
Yeah.
I eat it on everything. Like salt goes in my oatmeal. Like I must have salt, a shaker with me when I eat my oatmeal. Even that, like anything, I can put salt
Wow.
on. If I had Greek yogurt, which I haven't had in a couple months, but like if I had Greek yogurt mixed with like protein powder, like I'll put salt in it. Salt and cinnamon on everything.
Cinnamon for sure. The salt thing is throwing me off a little. I mean, like I'll put that in stuff and on stuff, but I don't know, sweet stuff. I'm like, let's. Sometimes I like it to be a little sweet and salty, but anyway, yeah, that is funny and kind of weird. But I love that you do that, and I love that you own it too. And you did mention earlier as well that you work a full-time job, and you're still able to get your cardio in, lifting in, meal prep, posing, vacuums, and of course your relationship time. So, what do you do to manage your schedule?
So for me, because I know that my work is Monday to Friday, 8 till 4:30 or 7:30 to 4:30, approximately in that time range. I work out every morning. I find like by the end of the day, like I work as the manager of finance for an investment company. And by the end of the day, I find my brain is just so fried that I know I won't be able to like mentally focus and have a good workout. So I make sure I have enough time in the morning. As I get closer to a show, right now, I've committed to like now I'm going to get up at 4 a.m. every day. Before it was like sometime between 4 and 4:30. Right now it's 4. If I have to start doing more closer to the show, like I'll get up at 3:50. I'll get up at 3:30. I'll get up at 3. Like whatever I need to do to get like my cardio posing training in before work, I will do it. Like, I just make sure I can get it in before, and that has always seemed to work. I go to bed, I'm like an old person. I go to bed at like 7:30 or 8.
I love it.
It just works for me.
That's awesome. No, I
And
definitely can relate to that. Sometimes you just have to get up and get it done.
and so with my new coach, there's been times recently, it hasn't been too bad the last couple of weeks, but he was kind of like getting used to my body, and I would send him check-in photos in the morning, but because there isn't daylight at that time before I go to work, he would then ask me to send daylight photos. So then I would drive home at like 9 a.m. and send daylight photos and then go back to work again.
Oh my gosh.
I do whatever I have to do to make it work. I take my lunch like an hour into working, basically.
And you would just tell him like, I have had one meal or whatever.
Yeah, I would just be like, yeah, I had like my pre-workout meal and then my breakfast, and yeah, he was fine with that, with them not being fasted.
Awesome. And one of our listeners actually was wondering what your most difficult prep has been and why it might have been your most difficult.
My most difficult prep, so this kind of contradicts what I said earlier about cardio. My most difficult prep was my pro debut. So this is, I think it's like a mixture of not the best coaching and a mixture of a decision I made. 6 weeks before my competition, I had LASIK eye surgery. And when I had the surgery, with the pain medication and with the sleeping medication, I was like so drugged up. I didn't remember anything, but I convinced my husband that we should have a cheat meal because it's going to taste amazing because I can't see.
Oh my
And it was 6
gosh.
weeks before my it was 6 weeks before my competition. So I woke up in the morning and I was like, "Did we have pizza yesterday?" And he's like, "We had burgers." I'm like, "What? Why would you let me do that?" He's like, "We had ice cream too." I was like, "What? Are you serious?" He's like, "And we had donuts." I was like, "Are like really?" Like, it's 6 weeks before my show. So like, that's on me. I know it's my fault that I shouldn't have done that 6 weeks before a show. But then I told my coach, and the next day he cut my calories by 500 calories a day and
no.
increased my cardio. So I was doing, it took me between 90 to 120 minutes to do my cardio. And once it was cut down to that, it didn't change for 6 weeks. So by the time I got to stage, I was just so depleted and so exhausted, like no breaks, like the diet never changed, cardio never changed, no refeeds, like no days off. So that was by far my hardest prep. It was mentally so draining and physically so draining.
You know what sucks? Like when I hear that, I just like think of all the girls who tell their coach that they've had like a, let's say they binge or they had a cheat and they weren't supposed to, and the coach instantly tells them go do extra cardio and I'm cutting your macros, because it negatively it reinforces this belief that you have to purge through restriction when you have something like that. And so it makes me sad to hear that you did that. And while obviously your coach was probably thinking she's a pro, it's a pro debut, she wants to compete in 6 weeks, this is the only way, I feel like on some level there's got to be there's a better way, where we don't enforce that that's what you have to do. It was pizza, donuts, and ice cream. Like, it shouldn't have been, personally, like when I hear this, I'm like, it shouldn't have been 6 weeks of deficiting just because you slipped up. I mean, am I wrong? Does that sound wrong? I feel like I'm triggered by that.
No.
I'm just like, ugh, it's pissing me off.
I completely agree with you. Like, and even going through it, I'm like, this is insane. Like, to cut calories, 500 calories a day, like that is an insane cut. And I figured, okay, maybe at some point, like, it's going to change.
Right.
So then when I flew to where my show was and seeing him in person, he's like, "You're way too lean." I was like, awesome, because I've been
Have
like
you not
suffering
been
for 6
like
weeks.
looking at my check-ins and noticing that? And
Yeah, so it was very frustrating for me to know that I like killed myself for 6 weeks. And I'm a type of person, it takes a lot for me to give up, so I won't I don't encourage people to do what I did. Like I've done this a lot of times, and especially if someone's going into their first show, that can be extremely hard on like you mentally, physically, on your body image, on your eating habits. But I feel like
Yeah.
I've kind of done this a lot of times that I know I can recover from it.
Right.
But for some people, it would take a lot out of them.
Definitely. And for some people who have a history of having an unhealthy relationship with food, it's even more toxic or detrimental. And so I encourage anyone listening, if you present to your coach, first of all, if you're afraid to even tell your coach that you slipped up, that's one thing. But then if you do tell your coach and they're like gonna punish you for it, I would question that and just say, hey, like, I know I messed up. If we need to push back the show date, that's fine. I don't want to go to extreme measures given my history with food, and just vouch for yourself. And while for someone like you who is like, well, I'm an athlete, I'm committed, this is what I'm going to do. There can be other people, who feel the same way, but who have that unhealthy relationship with food, and then it gets furthered, and it's a tough line. So you have to really know yourself. And it sounds like you knew what you needed to do, and you knew you could bounce back from it. But obviously I shared that it like, that's the kind of stuff that really bothers me. And it reminded me that a listener actually wanted to know, like, she says she's from the same area as you actually, and she wants to know what you find to be the most frustrating thing in the fitness industry.
Oh, the most frustrating thing in the fitness industry. That's a difficult one. There's a lot of things. I'm going to go with social media is the most frustrating thing in the fitness industry. It's so deceiving. I feel like I've gotten caught up in it in the past, and like seeing and believing things that are posted on social media, and like things that are posted by coaches. I know like people will say on social media, like, don't believe everything you see, like don't believe all the photos you see. Like it's not necessarily like they could be edited. I have seen a coach post and say like, oh, girls show up to shows and look nothing like their edited photos, but yet that same coach has edited my photos and posted them.
Yikes.
Like things like that like drive me crazy, just how fake social media can be. And I'd say that's the most frustrating. And people believe it and will like hire coaches based on it, and like will make decisions based on social media.
Yeah, a lot of people are usually frustrated by, those common misconceptions, and I guess maybe a better word is like the potentially misleading information. And I actually love social media personally. I'm like, oh, I think it's great. It's awesome. It's a positive platform, but I also notice and recognize the downfalls and dark sides and how easy it is to get caught up in it. I've been there myself, and I also know, there's a lot of girls who have gotten in that the grass is greener mindset, and then they go and it's not. It's probably more dead. So have you, I want to ask you one,
Absolutely.
you know what I mean? So I want to ask you one thing
Yeah.
about social media, and then I'm going to ask you a little bit about your coaching experience, because it's been brought up a few times, and I want to touch on it. So,
Yeah.
have you found social media to have any influence, or I guess I should say any different influence on your journey as a competitor now that you're a pro versus when you were an amateur?
This kind of goes with the deceiving parts of social media in a way. So as an amateur, going into like when I wanted to get my pro card, I was on social media way too much. I was looking at people's posts way too much. I was doing what everyone says to not do, sizing up the competition, seeing who's going to be there. I'm not sure, like, I know in the US, when you guys have like North Americans or like nationals, you'll have like a class winner. Each class winner will get a pro card, right? In Canada, it's not like that. When we have pro qualifiers, only the overall winner gets it. And then at some shows, there'll be like a master's overall winner that gets it. But since you know that there's one person getting it, everyone that is posted is your competition if you're going for a pro card. So I found as an amateur, going on social media and sizing up the competition to be like extremely detrimental to like competing. some days like I would feel really good, and other days like I would see a post that of someone competing, I'm like, there's no way I'm going to beat them, and it would just bring me down so much. Whereas as a pro, when I was going into my pro debut, seeing that Casey Samsel was going to be there, I was like, oh my God, that's so exciting. Like, I'm going to get to step on the same stage as an Olympian. Like, this is amazing. I can't wait to be up there with her. Like, as a pro, everyone's a pro. Everyone's made it. Everyone that's there is good. Like, I know like top pros, I'm sure, still somewhat size up the competition. Maybe not, but everyone is good. It could be anyone's day. I find there's a less impact on competing at the pro level with social media.
That's
Does that make sense?
interesting. Yeah, no, that does make sense. And um that I know there's a lot of girls who do size up their competition. And actually my coach, when we had coaches week, he came on and he talked a lot about that. And his name is Joe DeShulo, Team Edge. So if you guys are wondering, it's under coaches week. Anyway, he was talking about how he always tells girls like just get off of social media like the last 2 weeks, if not sooner. And he's not a big social media fan anyways, but it's just like he makes a great point. You know, if people start using the hashtags, they start going and then looking at other people using those hashtags. I personally, like this prep, have made it a priority. I don't, okay, like I know I'm competing in what show, but when I see someone post that they're the same amount of weeks out as me, I'm not like, oh, let me go and scroll their feed. It doesn't matter. Like, as long as we're focusing on bringing our best, like what will happen will happen. And, you know, you ended up earning your pro card, eventually, of course. And so when you did that, though, you were standing next to a lot of your teammates, actually. So did you find yourself comparing yourself to your teammates? And then when you were up there next to them, what was that like battling it out for the only pro card?
It was a very interesting experience. Like, so going into the show, I knew that there was going to be I believe there were 16 of us on the same team competing in the show. And I thought like, okay, so going to Toronto, there's going to be all these girls there. Like, I'm really like not like a catty confrontational person, but I just kind of like envisioned like, what is this atmosphere going to be like? There's got to be some cattiness. The actual show, like the girls were amazing. It was such a team atmosphere, which you wouldn't expect because there was like quite a few of us that wanted our pro card, but everyone was amazing. And like some of the other girls that I believe are really strong athletes, like those were the girls that I was the closest with. Like we were each other's biggest competition. But leading up to the competition was a little bit different because we're all on the same team and our coach likes to post a lot. And I would kind of like base how my prep's going based on how much he posts about me. So if he's posting about some of the other girls a lot, I was kind of like, damn, like they're pulling ahead of me now. And then if he's posting about me a lot, I'm like, okay, I'm doing good this week. So I kind of like based how I was doing on how much he was posting. But at one point with social media, there was a couple of girls on my own team that I hid their updates from mine because I was that intimidated by them. I was like, I can't, like, it's just messing with me mentally just too much. I can't see their updates. So I actually hid some of my own teammates temporarily before the show. But when it came down to show day, like I was pretty calm. I was like, you know what? I'll go out there and do my best. There's nothing to be catty about. It's show day. There's nothing more we can do. The work's done. So the actual event, it was amazing. It was great being up there, teammates. It was a great experience. Being on a big team was a great experience. Now I don't think it's necessarily a good thing to be on a big team, but it was a great experience having like a bunch of different girls that were all getting along.
That's interesting that you say that. And I mean, I've competed with and against some of my teammates too. And it's never, I don't know, it's never been a problem for me, but at the same time, I can relate to having to hide some stories. I think that comes sometimes when someone's maybe doing things differently than you, or maybe they have a different take on things than you, or like you said, if your coach is posting things, that can be tough. And you know, I'm just gonna come right out and say it. You did mention to me that there were some moments of doubt from your coach about you even earning your pro card. What was that like for you to deal with mentally when you know, had that doubt coming from someone who you were hoping to have really prep you for this?
So that's when I say, like, I'm not so sure it's a good thing to be on a big team anymore. I kind of feel like when you go into a show, your coach should be focused on you. Like, and it's fine to have like a couple girls in a show, but like 16 is a lot of girls in a show. Like, you can't be focused on everyone. You can kind of tell who their focus is on, who they think is going to win. I feel really bad about this. Like, I know I was still like in the top girls, but there was a bunch of us in the hotel room, and he took 5 of us out and wanted to do like a video with just 5 of us. So in that 5, he lined it up. So it was like his number 1 was in the middle, 2 and 3 were beside them, and then 4 and 5 were on the outside. So like I was on the outside, and I just like I knew that they didn't believe I was gonna get it. But at the like I wasn't concerned about it because I planned on doing 4 different shows. So I wasn't relying on that show to win the pro card. I wasn't like, I need to win this show. So I just kind of took it as this is going to be a good learning experience. I'll do my best. That's all I can do. I've done everything I can. So I didn't really get down about it. I don't know if anyone else did. No one's ever really said anything, but I feel like people don't really post about that. But yeah, I just went in and did my best I could. And
Good for you.
even after the show, I still don't think that my coach thought I deserved it. He told me that if one of my teammates had had a better bikini, she would have won. And if the other one could have walked to the back of the stage better, she would have won. So just to even like hear that after, it's like I still didn't believe in me even after I won.
That's tough to
But
hear. I mean, I'm not even in your position and I'm just like, what? Um,
yeah.
that's so unfortunate. And it makes me sad that girls experience having to go through that because, you know, you earn that. And that's the thing about this sport. You know, it's not just about the body. We have the posing, we have the presentation, we have the walk, we have the energy, we have the presence. All of these things matter. At the end of the day, you came out on top. And then you went on to have such a successful pro debut. And I think a lot of girls wonder if it's possible to really do well as a pro, you know, the moment they become one. So, of course, you explained what your prep for that was like, but what do you think contributed to your success as a new pro?
Oh, that's tough. I think so. I had a fair amount of time between shows. I got my pro card at the beginning of kind of like the season. It was like the beginning of spring. It was the first pro qualifier in Canada. And then I competed in my pro show. So that was in the very beginning of June. And my pro show was at the end of September. So it was quite a bit of time between there. For me, I'm not naturally good at posing. I don't have a background in dance. So for me, posing was the biggest thing. So I think just practicing posing a lot, envisioning what it's going to be like to be up there, manifesting it, spending time journaling it, spending time just like laying in bed, envisioning me winning, envisioning me placing, envisioning me being in first call outs. I feel like just believing in myself made a difference.
I love that. That is awesome. And I love that you said that because that's something I'm a big believer in. And I think it's really awesome that you said what really contributed to your success as well. And, you know, you brought up your coaches and you've had 4 different coaches throughout your time as an athlete. And you recently made a switch. You know, you just expressed how you don't really know how you feel about the big teams anymore. So what have you learned from each of the experiences that has led you to hire the coach you are with now? Like, is there anything you want to share from your past experiences that you think could be beneficial for other girls, maybe looking at big teams or just coaches in general to help them go through the hiring process in a more effective way? So maybe they don't have to have multiple coaches.
Yeah, for sure. I've had a lot of different coaching experiences. I've had coaches that were local. I've now been on two different big teams. I had a coach, one of my first coaches, kind of just went like MIA, like on show day, like he just didn't respond to
Wow.
anything. So that's crazy. Yeah, I had a coach just kind of disappeared out of nowhere. Um, I've been on big teams, been on small teams. I think as an amateur, I did have a really good coach when I was an amateur that they were a smaller coach as well. And when you're an amateur, I think you have so much to learn and about the sport, about what you need to do to be prepared for the sport. And being on a smaller team, I think as an amateur sometimes can be really beneficial because that person has enough time to tell you and to prepare you what to be expected for. Whereas being on a bigger team, if you rationally think about it, if a coach is saying that they have 100 athletes, 150 athletes, 200 athletes, how can you coach 200 athletes well? How can you give them enough attention? As someone who's an amateur, you likely need more time and attention from your coach because you have a lot more to learn than someone that's a pro. And I think that that is a big thing that should be taken into consideration when you're considering a coach as an amateur. Now with my new coach, so I never thought I would be on this team because it is technically one of the biggest teams in Canada. And I would not have sought out this coach based on it being a big team. Now, so he started talking to me on social media and we talked back and forth for a while and kind of talking about competition. I asked him like about like his coaching methods, like what has kind of happened in the past, like the direction he's going in the future, and just having that communication. If you can find a coach that you can communicate with, that you know their background, that they're willing to share information with you. He even was providing me with advice before I ever gave him any money or any indication I was going to hire him as a coach. I feel like to me that made a big difference in hiring him. Like I felt before I even hired him, I knew what he was going to be like. As an amateur, I think that can be hard because being a pro, like I have won a couple times, so that kind of makes coaches more interested, whereas being an amateur, they don't really necessarily know that they can trust and believe in you. But if you can find a coach that's willing to communicate with you and that you can trust, I think that that is one of the most important parts. Someone that you know values you and you trust.
Mm,
Did that answer
yeah.
it?
No, absolutely. So because you did mention you asked him about some of his coaching methods, um, and he gave you lots of value and everything even before you hired him. How have your approaches been different? Like, what's been some of the different protocols or philosophies that you've been coached through? And of those, what have you learned about yourself?
So most of my coaches have given me training programs. I'm not someone who has a background in personal training. I've spent a lot of years learning on my own. I've spent years with different coaches, different trainers. I'm actually 9 years into like being like consistently into health and fitness. So I've learned a lot along the way. But I do think having a training program does make a big difference, or having a coach that will manipulate your training program, because I don't necessarily follow a strict training program with my coach Amber, but he will change. Like right now, I'm not training legs. I was training legs last week. The week before that, I wasn't training legs. Just like having a coach that will change the training, having a coach that cares. I shouldn't necessarily, like having a coach that is giving you more than just a plan. Like I've had coaches that are like, "Okay, here's your meal plan. Follow the meal plan. Work out this many days a week, do this much cardio," and they kind of like leave you there doing that for like weeks on end.
Mm.
Whereas a good coach will really monitor that. When you're checking in, they will pay attention to, okay, what areas need to be built up, what areas need to change, how often you check in. I find now a big difference that I feel with Amber is I check in, but then a lot of days he will just text me like in the afternoon and be like, "How are you feeling now?" or text
Mm-hmm.
me in the evening and be like, how are you feeling now? Like, how's your energy? Like, how are you hungry? Things like that, I do think make a big difference. Like if you're following a plan and you're starving and you're drained of energy for an extended period of time, a coach should know that and should change your plan. I don't think any coach I've had before Amber has paid attention to how I'm feeling.
Interesting. And it's also, I think just for listeners, maybe if your coach isn't as attentive, that's an opportunity to be expressive with your coach, because I think some coaches naturally are like that, very caring, very hands-on, very much so want to take in every data point possible. And then I think there's some coaches who have that belief of like, okay, if something's going on, they're going to let me know. And it's not pre-discussed or disclosed. And that's not necessarily like their fault. It's almost like, okay, as an athlete, I think we can also take some responsibility and be like, this is what's going on. But I know how hard that can be when we're like, just, okay, I just need to trust my coach. I don't know if I should reach out, or, and I've heard things like, he tells me not to, or she tells me not to. And so I think, finding a coach that meets your needs and fits your style is so important. It sounds like you found that. And because you've worked with so many different coaches, well, not like so many, you know what I mean? But you've worked with a few different coaches. When I say that, I don't mean like, oh, hundreds. You've worked with a few
Yeah.
different coaches. So have you ever wanted to be a coach yourself?
So I did do a bit of coaching last year, and I enjoyed doing it. I have my precision nutrition certification, which is it's a work at your own pace certification. With all my experience with different coaches, like I do feel like I have a pretty good knowledge base, a lot of experience myself. I enjoyed coaching, doing some lifestyle. I've had a lot of people inquire with me about doing competition coaching, but I personally feel like I don't have the certifications to be telling other people what they should be doing. So that is why I don't coach anymore. Something's recently come up that I might start coaching. I'm not sure yet, but this has happened even since you and I talked. This happened this week. So I'm not sure. I might coach, I might not. We'll see. I might have a mentor, which makes a big difference to
Yes.
me. Having someone that's going to mentor me to start coaching, someone that's going to train me, which I think can be better than any certification if you have someone with a bunch of certifications mentoring you.
Right.
But that's just my personal take on it. But for coaching, back to your comment on reaching out to your coach and expressing how you're
Oh,
feeling.
yeah.
I think a big part of that, you need to trust your coach. You need to have open communication with your coach. Whereas I find in the past, it's on me. I'm not gonna play victim to any coaches I've ever hired or any bad experiences I've ever had. I know myself in the past, I've hired a coach because I want to do well, and I know what they want, and that doesn't necessarily align with how I feel, but I will tell them what they want to hear because I want it to do well. But I didn't have any trust or any open communication with them. So I think communication goes a long way. You need to have that trust and communication. It makes a huge difference than just having a coach dictate to you a plan. Because I don't feel like I could have, if they weren't asking me how I'm feeling, if I was to be hey, I feel super shitty right now. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have swore.
It's okay.
I feel drained. I feel exhausted. I don't know what they would have said. I feel like he would have been okay,
Yeah.
follow the plan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's tough.
That's another thing. I don't like complaining. I struggle with that. So when Amber asks me how are you feeling, I'll be honest, but I don't go out of my way to be I feel really shitty today.
Yeah. Yeah, of course, but he'll ask you, and that's kind of that's why that is a beneficial method for you, because he reaches out to you and he probably knows you're not one to complain.
Yeah.
I had a similar thing with my coach. He was because I was he asked me how have you been feeling? And I was like, oh gosh, how do I even answer this? I'm I feel like so good with all things considered, and then it's like, even when I'm sick, it's like, I'm sick, but I'm still showing up every day, and he's like, when was the last time you took a day off? And I'm like, oh, it's been a while. And he's like, well, what the hell? Like, you need to take a day off in between your competitions. And I'm like, it's just, I love, and he's like, okay, you need to chill. But I'm similar to you, where it's like, I'm not going to be the one to go out of my way and be like, oh, I'm exhausted and everything is hard. I'm just like, no, I'm going to suck it up and do what needs to be done. But when he asks, I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, I need to at least, express it almost like treating it like from a observational standpoint, where it's what's the word I'm looking for? It's almost like omniscient, where you just express it as it is without emotion attached to it, where it's like, I am tired, but it's not like I'm so tired and everything's hard. It's just like, this is the data points.
Yeah, exactly. Because like for me, like being at 4 weeks out, like if Amber had asked me like 2 hours ago, like how are you feeling? I would have been like, well, I'm 4 weeks out, and considering I'm 4 weeks out, I feel like I'm 4 weeks out. Like I'm really tired today. Like I'm the same way. Like I'm like, based on what's going on, I feel how I should. But
Yep.
that's not always the case. Like when you're 16 weeks out, you feel awful. You probably shouldn't.
Yeah. No, exactly. So Um, I want to talk now about something we've never talked about, although we've already touched on things that, push the limits a little bit, which I like. So,
Yeah.
okay, so let's talk about family planning. How
Yeah.
does your husband feel about everything you do? Aside from being, so supportive and cheering you on, because I know he does, when it comes to starting a family, where's his head at and your head at?
So my husband, he's always been very supportive of me. We're very supportive of each other. Like I want him to do whatever his heart desires, whatever's going to bring him the most happiness. And he feels the same way. But my husband is a couple years older than me. I'm 28 and he's 32, and he feels like he's not getting any younger. And I know he feels that way. So I know that he's been kind of eager to start having a family. And I said after my last competition that we would. But like being a competitor, it feels like when you make that decision, like you don't know if you're giving up competing. Like I'm not sure. And it's something that we had talked about even a year ago. Like when I was going for my pro card, we had said, like, if I don't get it, like 100% we're having a family. If I don't get my pro card in 2019, we're having a family. At the time, it kind of felt like, oh, like something like we're just saying, like it didn't really feel like it was that serious. My sister just had a baby in August, and that's the first baby in the family, in either of our families. So now that I have a nephew, it kind of feels like everything's changed. Like I want a baby now too, and so does my husband. So he's been patient, but for me, it even right now it's even still like a mental battle of like competing and having a baby. Like I some days I want to have a baby more than I want to compete, and then some days I want to compete more than I want to have a baby. But you can't do both, and it's frustrating. And I'm not sure if anyone else goes through this. Another fear that I have that no one ever talks about is I don't know the toll that I've put on my body competing so much. Like I don't know if it's going to be hard to get pregnant. And like that scares me because I'm so used to controlling everything. If being a competitor, I feel like most competitors are used to controlling things. You control your body, you control your food, you control your physical activity, but it's like out of your control.
Oh yeah. No, I appreciate you opening up and sharing those fears. Do you have a plan? Because, and by the way, you're not the only one who thinks about this, because I've had girls reach out to me about having discussions on the podcast about it,
Oh, really?
but no one's openly come to me and said, let's talk about it and tell you. And for me, it was an awkward subject to ask a girl, like, how do you feel about starting a family? When they never
Yeah.
put it in their like form that I send out. So I appreciated that you brought that up to me, because it is something that needs to be talked about. It is something people want to talk about. When you say you're not you're not sure how much you've done to your body, are there signs that are telling you, hey, this might be difficult for me?
No, so being completely honest about competing and myself, I I had my method of birth control was having an IUD, and I had that for 7 years, and in that time I never got my period. And that's
Mm-hmm.
completely normal, so I'm told. But because of that, I don't know like if I would have lost it, like how often I would have lost my period, like how messed up my hormones could possibly be because I had it for so long. I did get it taken out after my last competition, so I actually know that I can get a period, but now it's gone. So I don't know like how long it will be gone for. So
Mm.
like because I don't know where my health is at, which is not great. I did get blood work done and it came
Uh-huh.
back like it wasn't hormones though. It was just like it was non-hormonal blood work. I don't know. I'm not sure what it was, but it came back normal. My doctor had me get it done. But there's nothing specific that makes me concerned other than I don't know how like the activity and the dieting is going to affect me getting pregnant. And it scares me to not get pregnant for like a long period of time.
And does it scare you because like you've been choosing competing over starting a family for so long now?
Um, it scares me because like I'm like if I don't get pregnant, then I'm gonna want to go back into competing again. And
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that makes it scares me that I might not be able to get pregnant and then I'm wasting time like trying to get pregnant if I can't and when I could be competing because I'm still like back and forth on both. Like if I can't get pregnant, I would rather compete, but I do want to get pregnant. So I don't know. It's
Mm-hmm.
difficult because I feel like I'm trying to like make a decision to make a life change, but I can't control it actually changing.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. It's like a life is a miracle and you can't control miracles.
Mhm. Yeah. So I could have I can't get pregnant now, I'm sure, because I'm close enough to a competition, but I could have in this prep and I wouldn't like it was a possibility.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's
So
true. I know someone who won their pro card while they were pregnant and they didn't know they were pregnant. And
what?
they had twins. So
That's insane. Like that's so
it is
crazy.
insane. It is crazy to think about. Like, but the body just didn't show it because obviously she was prepping for a show. So it's interesting because it's very possible, but I think everything happens with perfect timing. And the way you've committed to your competing, I don't see why you wouldn't find that same drive and commitment in starting a family if you really wanted it the way, you really want competing.
Yeah, I agree, but I feel like I would try so hard that I would put so much stress on myself that the cortisol would just like not let me
Scared
get
away.
pregnant. I'd be too stressed out. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. What does your husband say about all of this? Like, have you expressed that to him?
Not overly, like somewhat. So kind of. So I kind of thought that I would be able to get pregnant just immediately after like getting off birth control. And then I went and talked to my doctor and he's like, no, like it's probably going to take at least a couple months, like for you to just like get into like a regular cycle. And I was like, oh, that sucks. So then part of the reason I went to compete again was like, Kate, like let's distract me with competing. So he does kind of know that like I was anxious and I was like, hey, like can I compete so that we can like hopefully like my body can regulate more, be off of birth control, be off of like the hormones. So he knows it's a bit of a stress for me and right now competing's keeping my mind off of it. But I might go like he probably anticipates that I'll go back to like how I was. Like I was kind of like, okay, like stressed out, like when is it gonna happen? So he's a little
Mm-hmm.
aware, but we don't talk about it in any length.
Yeah. Do
Hmm.
you have a goal? like in mind for when you would ideally be starting a family?
The day after my competition.
This
Yeah.
upcoming one?
Yeah.
Oh my
Yes.
gosh.
Yeah. So that's the plan, is like,
Celebration
yeah.
baby.
Yeah, celebration baby. Yeah. Yeah, the plan is as soon as I'm done competing. But that was also the plan after the last competition. So things constantly change. And like, having a baby is not taking away from like how well I want to do with this competition. It's by no means like
Right. If
making it,
anything, it's probably
oh well,
making you hungrier.
it kind of is, because I'm kind of like, you know what, this could be the last competition. Like, I want to go out there and I want to kill it. Like, this could be the last one. I
So
would
you don't think you'd
love to
compete
win.
you don't think you'd compete after you have a baby?
I don't know, because you just don't
You don't
know.
know. That's
You don't
true.
know if your body's going to bounce back. Like, some people bounce back right away, some people don't. Um, Also, like, once we have a family, it has always been something that I've dreamed of and envisioned in my future, is that I'm going to be like the primary caregiver. Like, I will never just be a stay-at-home mom, but I will stay at home at least majority of the time. I might work part-time. I might like just continue to go to school. But because I'm the primary caregiver, I'm not really sure if like how prep would fit into that. Like, I know some people make it work, but I'm not sure. And I could completely change what I want once we have kids. I could be like, okay, I don't want to compete anymore.
Yeah, everything could change. Man, the
Yeah,
amount of
I think
moms
everything
I've
will change.
Oh yeah. No, you're right. That's a very good point. All the moms I've had on here have brought very different perspectives, to the show, as I'm sure you've heard. And
Mhm.
it's interesting because that's the thing. You just don't know. And you won't know until it's probably happening. And even then, I hear moms say, we still don't know. So
Yeah,
yeah,
for
and
sure.
your husband actually messaged me the other day, and I asked like for stories of things to talk about, and he told me, and I thought this was cool and interesting. He said that your very first prep ever was actually during your wedding trip in 2017, and you were in Puerto. Oh my God, I always say this thing wrong. Puerto Vallarta for 19 days, and you stayed committed to your plan. So I want to know, in retrospect, are you glad you were on prep, or do you wish you hadn't had a show in mind during your honeymoon?
I think that he was deceiving on that one. That is not true. So I, I,
Uh-oh. I started a fight.
his, his, his attention to detail is not always great. So in the fall, I hired a coach because I wanted to compete in the following spring. And then we got married in February of 2017 in Puerto Vallarta. And I was in great shape getting ready for the wedding, going there. My coach at the time, he told me, he's like, this is your wedding. You get married once. I was like, okay, like, what should I eat when I'm there? Like, what should my diet be? He's like, don't worry about it. Like, eat whatever you want. Like, you're getting married once. So when
Yes.
we were on the trip, I was not on plan. I worked out every day, but I was definitely not on plan.
Well,
When we
he
got back from
admired
the
your discipline.
so when we got back from the trip, I was 10 pounds heavier than before we left. So there was a lot of water retention. There was some alcohol that was drank. There was a lot of late night carbs. So when I got back, it was actually a really difficult prep, and it was my first show ever. So there was a lot of unknown. So it was quite stressful, and my body didn't respond right away. I know my weight didn't drop for like a couple weeks. So I was really good leading up to the wedding, and then I was good after the wedding, but the actual wedding trip, there was no food plan.
So, how one of our listeners actually asked, and now I want to know, how long was that first prep?
The first prep, so I started with my coach in October of 2016, and then the wedding trip was pretty much most of February, and then I had 8 weeks before my show. So it was kind of like a
Wow.
long prep with a 19-day break.
Yeah, a little diet break.
Yeah.
Little break, that's okay, and you came out and you realized, hey, you know what, I didn't love the experience, but I want to do better and I can do better. And now I want to
Yes.
fast forward. At your very first national show, you were supposed to step on stage around 11 a.m. for prejudging, and you didn't end up going
Yeah.
on until 4:30 p.m. ish, and then you weren't even on stage for finals until 1:30 a.m. So how did you and your coach at the time work together to make sure you still brought, a good presentation?
So my coach at the time, she wasn't there. She was like at home in Saskatoon, so she was very remote. I was kind of on my own with that one. That was like the craziest day ever. So because we were supposed to be on stage at 11, I remember I was the last one tanning, and I was tanning at like 10:30. My hair and makeup was done at 4 a.m. So I got my hair and
Uh-huh.
makeup done at 4 a.m. by the show provider. So like the timeline was really messed up because they did my hair and
Mhm.
makeup at 4 a.m. and then I got on stage at 4:30 p.m. I basically just laid backstage for like 6 hours and just like didn't move. So my body just, it was okay. I ate a little bit before I went on stage. That was my first national show. It was also the first year of Canadian Physique Alliance in
Oh.
Canada. So it was a lot was unknown. I really did not even understand what that show like meant. And like, yes, someone got a pro card, but my full understanding of like the ISBV and how it related to Canadian Physique Alliance wasn't there. I was just kind of like out to lunch on what was going on, but everything went well. I placed third at the show, but there was no like plan. Like my coach was like, "Yeah, have like a little chocolate bar before you get on stage," and that's basically it. I think I ate like 2 chocolate bars that day, and I was awake for almost 24 hours. No water.
Oh.
It was poorly planned.
Oh yeah,
It
no,
was poorly planned.
I've been at a poorly not yeah, I've been at an unpredicted show where it was like not that long and crazy. That's long. That's crazy. That's like those are the ones where I'm like, why wasn't it 2 days? Why wasn't it 2 days? Um, but yeah, I went to one and I remember I had my makeup done at like 4 a.m., just like you. And then we were all tan. I did not go on stage until afternoon as well because it was a pro show is in conjunction with the amateur show. It was like we were all
Mm.
lined up ready to go on stage. Okay, now we're gonna take a break for the pros, and I'm like, oh no, like I can't do this, can't do this anymore. But it's fine. I mean, we ended up having a lot of fun backstage. But yeah, I can understand the frustration only to like a certain extent. I can't imagine all day. What was your husband doing? Because I mean, obviously our families, when they come, they're like, oh my god, when are they stepping on stage? What was he doing during that time?
Oh, the poor guy. So I'm backstage because I really was clueless to what's going on, didn't have a coach there. Like I just wanted to kind of like be at the place I was supposed to be for whenever like things started to get going.
Right.
So I stayed backstage like pretty much the whole time. He was watching the show pretty much the whole time
Oh
for
my
like
gosh.
all day by himself watching
What a
the show.
saint.
He's such a trooper. Just yeah, watching the show. I should have been out there watching the show with him, but I was backstage. And you know what it's like backstage. Backstage is
Hmm.
not a great place to be. Like they're usually dingy, plastic up everywhere, cold cement floors. Yeah, it was a long time of lying
Yeah,
on cement floor.
definitely. So,
Yeah.
one other thing I love to ask, since one of our listeners, her name's Courtney, actually, she figured out because in a previous episode I was like, "Who asked me?" They came through, and I realized it was them. So, this girl named Courtney asked, like, and I love now knowing from all these other athletes too, if you could only do one exercise for your glutes, hamstrings, and shoulders, what exercise would you pick for each of those?
I've had time to think about this because I've listened to the other episodes.
I love that about you.
I'm prepared. I had notes before, but then because like I was trying to set up my computer, my notes are no longer with me.
Oh, yes, that
I'm
was a
such a preparer.
situation. That's so awesome.
Yeah. So for shoulders, I think like I like lateral raises, like dumbbell lateral raises, kind of like all lateral raises, but I do like dumbbell lateral raises the best.
How do you
For
perform them?
ham,
Do you have like a certain hand position you like?
I used to have really bad form until I went to Toronto and worked with my coach in person. So that's been life changing for me. I've put on a lot of upper body muscle thanks to him. Now, the best way for me to perform them is to like lean forward a bit. So the best way is with a bench, like on an inclined bench, I'll kneel on a bench and like lean my chest into it and kind of lean forward a bit and then keep my hands so that they're like palms down to do like
Mm-hmm.
lateral raises. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Yes. Palms down to do lateral raises. And then when I'm doing front raises, it's more of like a hammer curl hold.
Mm-hmm. Yep,
That
that
makes
makes
sense.
sense.
Yeah. Yeah. So I find that's the best
Okay.
way.
And how about
And
glutes and
then
hamstrings?
glutes, I really like using like a hip thruster machine and doing like full range of motion, like fully lengthening the glute at the bottom and then contracting it as high and hard as I can. Like that I find is the best way for me to work my glutes, just full range of motion. And then for hamstrings, my favorite exercise is I don't think it has a name. You lie on the ground at the Smith machine and do single leg, sort of like Smith leg press. And I find by using the Smith machine, you can like really position your body so that it hits like your glute ham tie-in. And I'll put my foot pronated and I just find it works the hamstring and glute so well using
Awesome.
single leg.
I
Yeah.
love that. And so, speaking of glutes, someone wanted to know what you've done to add size to your upper glutes.
To my upper glutes, I would say two main things. Using the reverse hack squat, standing with your feet close together, like higher up on it, like towards the back of it, and doing like a good morning, but you can bend your knees slightly, but keeping the weight in your heels, you'll feel it so much at the top of your glutes. Doing that, and then the abductor machine. I love the abductor machine. I use that so much every glute day. Always
Do
use
you
the
do it
abductor.
the way that, the display says to do it, or do you do it like hovering?
Um, I think I do it more the way I never do it hovering. My coach now has me do it, so I'm leaning back and like pulling myself down and back,
Mm-hmm.
and then I drive my heels into the foot part,
Yep.
and then my legs to the outside, and keep pressure on the outside the whole time. It makes it significantly harder. Like when I see people doing like the whole stack, I'm like, nope, it's not happening in my form. Like my form makes it extremely hard.
Definitely. I think a lot of people find like once they transform, the way they're actually doing the exercise, it makes it more difficult. That's why weight, isn't much to brag about when if you don't feel it, right? So,
Yeah.
I'm going to ask you next for your best advice for girls who have never competed before, and then your best advice for those who are on their road to pro.
So for girls who have never competed before, I would say know why you're competing. I think it's very important to love the lifestyle. If you're in a competition prep and you get to a point that you hate what you're doing. I talk to a lot of amateurs. I love talking to people about competing. I love helping amateurs. So anyone that wants to reach out to me on Instagram, go ahead. I'm open to discussing competition. Love it. Any advice you need about competing. So if you come to a point that you hate it, stop. You don't have to get on that stage. Like people say, like, don't quit, whatever. If you hate what you're doing every day, if you hate food prepping, if you hate going to the gym, there's nothing wrong with not competing. So that's my best advice to amateurs. I know a lot of girls that step on stage that it's very difficult for them to get to that point, and they get to a point that they don't like working out at all anymore after. That's my best advice. It's a little different than most people say, and I don't want to reiterate what a lot of people say for advice. So that's my advice for the amateurs. And then for someone looking to go pro, I find, like, I've thought about this a lot, and I want to say, like, take your time, but I didn't, like, because I didn't have to take a long time, I don't feel like it's my place to say. Like, I feel like I was lucky that I got it on my second attempt. Going pro, like, the stage will always be there. Enjoy it. Once you go pro, life doesn't change that much. Your day-to-day life is still the same. I think that there's like a misconception that once you go pro, like, something is going to change. Life is still the same. The stage is still the same. You just get some more time up there. Yeah, take your time. Don't stress out about it too much. When I got my pro card at a show that I did not think I was going to get it, and I got it because I was extremely calm, because I didn't think I was going to get it. Whereas I find when people, like, stress themselves out a lot, it becomes, like, overwhelming, too much pressure.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I
Yeah.
love that advice, and I really appreciate you sharing that, as well as being so open and honest and, really raw, which is what this podcast is all about. This whole episode, I just appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I appreciate you, and I want people to be able to reach out to you, like you said, and talk to you about competing and get your insight and just connect with you. So can you let everyone know what your Instagram is, or maybe other ways they can find you?
Yes, the best way to find me is Instagram. My Instagram is Jenn Scott _IFBB Pro. And yeah, don't be afraid to send me DMs, ask me questions. I'm there to communicate. That's what I use social media for, and that's what I enjoy.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much again for your time, and to everybody listening. I really would love if you guys continue to post your stories. It's so awesome, and the athletes really appreciate it too as you guys listen. And your ratings, reviews, and subscriptions mean so much to me. And I gotta say, when I read them, and I do go and check, puts a smile on my face. Sometimes I get a hater every now and then, but all the love means so much to me, and I really appreciate you guys for tuning in every week, or if this is your first time, thank you so much for joining us. And Jenn, again, thank you.
Thanks for having me, Celeste.
Of course. So I hope you all have an amazing rest of your day, night, or morning, wherever you are in the world while you're listening to this episode. Just make it